Story 1, they were headed off to a wedding in Dalton, Georgia. Some distant cousin I couldn't even picture. A whole weekend of formal dinners, endless handshakes, forced laughter. They knew I'd be miserable, so they didn't push me to go. I volunteered to stay behind. Said I'd watch the place. Truth was, I just wanted peace. A couple of days without questions, without chatter. Our house sat high in the smoky foothills, where the asphalt ran out and the forest took over. Locals called our road the Ridge's Dead End. Because that's exactly what it was, the last house clinging to the mountain before it fell back into trees. To get there, you had to ease across to rickety bridges. Then grind your tires up a slope of gravel that seemed to vanish under the pines. At the top was a clearing no bigger than a football field, and our home right at the center of it. I loved the isolation. No traffic, no strangers wandering by. The nearest occupied house was 3 miles downhill, and the nearest empty one a sagging farmhouse hadn't seen life in decades. Out there, you only had company if you meant to. That Friday afternoon, I waved from the porch as their car curved into the woods, taillights shrinking. Then I kicked my shoes off, slid a frozen lasagna into the oven and sprawled across the couch with a blanket. The plan was simple. Sleep, snack, burn through the queue of shows I'd been ignoring. The kind of weekend where you barely change clothes, and at first, it was exactly that by midnight. I'd have dozed into a comedy rerun. One of those hollow states where you're not awake, but not gone either. That's when I heard a dot tap. Tap, tap. It sounded sharp enough to slice into the haze. Fingernail against glass. I didn't move. Just stared at the flickering TV and told myself it was part of the background laugh track. Maybe a branch. Maybe nothing. But a full minute later, just as my heartbeat was finding rhythm again, it came back. Dot tap. Tap dot same. Cadence. Same spot dot this time. I sat up. Mute button kill the TV. The silence was suffocating. No frogs, no owls, not even the buzz of night insects. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my breath. I padded to the front window, flipped the porch light on. Empty clearing, still air. Nothing moved, not the trees, not the gravel. I pressed close, scanning. The beam of the light reached maybe 15 feet. Beyond that, the woods were ink, but up near the glass nothing. Just me and my nerves. I checked the locks, every one of them solid. Then I turned off the light, headed to my bedroom, grabbed a flashlight, and locked the door. I curled under the covers and, at some point, drifted into an easy sleep. The next day, quiet to quiet, I went about the routine, but couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. I left every lamp blazing, even in rooms I never used. That night, instead of TV, I read. Forcing myself to stay alert. Round midnight, I made tea. Something hot to ground me. Then I heard it. Not glass this time. Below. Thud. 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 I froze. Mark halfway to my mouth. Thud. 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 Muffled. Deliberate, as though something was knocking the underside of the floor. Not wild, not frantic. Slow. Measured. Our house didn't have a basement. Just a crawl space, 3 feet high at most. Accessed through a hatch hidden under the porch steps. Nobody used it unless pipes burst or some animal died down there. Heart hammering. I grabbed the flashlight, slid open the back door, and stepped into the cool air. I wanted so badly to turn round, to pretend I hadn't heard, but my legs carried me to the hatch. The padlock still hung there, but wrong. The shank was looped through. Yet the securing pin, the bolt that kept it shut, was gone. Not broken, not dropped, simply gone. The lock was nothing but decoration now. And the dirt around the hatch wasn't right either. No boot prints, no claw marks, just a pattern, faint and deliberate, like someone had walked carefully. Trying not to leave tracks, I backed away, fast, bolted inside, and shoved a chair under the back door handle. I sat on the kitchen floor with my back against the fridge until the sun came up. Sunday morning. I tried to play normal. Breakfast, music, the works, but every sound made me jump. I kept checking my phone for service. For any lifeline. Nothing. I considered driving into town but stalled. How would I explain it? Something tapped on my window. And the lock looks weird. They'd laugh. Or worse, they'd worry. That night, I checked every bolt and shade. I pulled the biggest knife from the kitchen and dragged the dresser in. Front of my bedroom door. A little after 1, the TV cut off. Not the power. The plug was still in. The lamp still glowing. The screen just went black. And the instant it died, I swear the air in the house changed. Then every bulb flickered at once. Not a blackout, more like a pulse, as if something had brushed through the wiring. And then tap, tap. Living room window. Tap, tap. Kitchen glass. Tap, tap. Bathroom pane. Tap, tap. Laundry room. Every window in the house, in rhythm, in sequence, like they were playing a game. I didn't scream, didn't move, just closed the bedroom door. Shoved the dresser tighter. Then dash tap, tap on the bedroom glass. I couldn't bring myself to look. I sat on the floor, knife gripped in both hands, heart pounding so hard it felt like I might choke. And then came the knocks, not taps, heavy, slow, 4 of them on the wall. Right where my head leaned. I must have blacked out, whether from terror or exhaustion I don't know, because when I opened my eyes again, sunlight was filtering through the blinds. The house was still. Every window was intact. Not broken, not cracked, but each bore a faint smudge, human height, as if someone had pressed their face close. Period. The crawl space hatch was shut, but the latch had been warped, not snapped, just bent, twisted, as if strong hands had gripped both ends and pulled until the metal gave way. That was it. I stuffed clothes into a bag, scribbled a note, and drove straight to Bell's without looking in the rear view once. I'd been meaning to test myself for a while, see if I could handle real solitude. No phone service, no TV hum, no neighbors close enough to hear if I yelled. So when my aunt offered me the keys to a small mountain lodge tucked deep in the Blue Ridge, I said yes. She normally used it for weekend getaways with my uncle. But I wanted it for a week all to myself. The drive there was longer than I remembered from childhood trips. Roads that seemed harmless back then, now cold and narrowed, until I had to crawl round bends with my headlights barely pushing through the trees. When I finally pulled up, the place looked older, heavier somehow, cedar siding darkened by rain, moss clinging to the porch rail. Inside wasn't much. A couple of wooden chairs, a cracked leather couch, the smell of old pine. I dropped my backpack by the door, lined up cans of soup and pasta on the counter, and stacked firewood in a neat pyramid next to the stove. I told myself it would be a reset, simple meals, long walks, maybe a few pages of the book I'd been meaning to finish. The first night was better than expected. I sat by the wood stove, sipping cheap tea, listening to the quiet press in from outside. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. The second evening changed that. I was bent over the stove, stirring a pot of instant ramen, when a weight settled onto the porch. The cabin had this warped plank that always gave a drawn-out groan when you stepped on it. I'd forgotten about it until I heard it moan through the walls. One step. Slow. Deliberate. I froze, spoon hovering midair. The ramen hissed and popped. But all I could hear was that creak. Another step followed. Closer. Then silence. I edged toward the window and peeped out. The rocking chair swayed faintly in the moonlight, the porch rail casting jagged shadows. But nothing else moved. I told myself it was a deer. Maybe even a bear brushing past. But bears don't make a single measured step and stop. Back at the stove. I'd barely picked up the spoon when the noise returned. Longer this time, a dragging groan that sounded like someone shifting their weight right outside the door. Before I could think twice, I yanked the door open. Nothing. Just the smell of damp wood and earth. I gave a shaky laugh, tried to tell myself the cabin was settling. But when I pushed the door closed, I noticed the lock. It wasn't how I'd left it. The deadbolt hung in the middle, not turned fully one way or the other. That stopped me cold. I was compulsive about locks, always checked twice. I slammed it shut, twisted the bolt tight, shoved a chair under the knob. My chest thudded. My mind kept replaying the sound. The deliberate weight of that step, hours later, when I finally dragged myself into the bedroom. I kept my flashlight clutched in one hand, boots still on, blanket pulled to my chest. I told myself I'd stay alert. But sometime after midnight, a new sound crawled in, scraping low and slow, like something metal being pulled across the outer wall. It started near the kitchen window, then slid toward the corner, then round to the back of the cabin. My flashlight beam shook across the glass, catching nothing but black trees and the faint white smear of moonlight. The scraping circled until it stopped right outside my bedroom wall. Then came the knocks, 3 of them, sharp, measured, right against the back door. I sat rigid, pulse hammering in my ears. Nothing else followed, just the ticking of the old clock in the other room and my breath catching in my throat. I stayed like that for the rest of the night, perched in the kitchen with my flashlight pointed at the door. I don't remember falling asleep, just jerking awake when pale daylight finally cut through the curtains. I forced myself outside. That's when I saw them. Footprints, not bare, not sneakers, boots. They circled the cabin over and over, in patterns, wide spirals, strange looping turns, like someone had been tracing shapes into the dirt. They weren't there when I arrived, and there were no tire tracks, no sign of a vehicle at all. Whoever it was had come on foot and walked those circles for hours. I didn't bother with breakfast, didn't bother folding clothes. I crammed everything into my bag. Left the half-eaten ramen on the stove and drove until my hands ached from gripping the wheel. Every curve in that mountain road felt like another chance for someone to be standing just round the bend. When I finally got service, I called my aunt. Told her I was heading back early. She didn't ask why, and I didn't offer. I haven't been back since. Story 3. My sister Claire had weekend duty at the animal shelter over in Milford. She couldn't drag me along, so she dropped me off at the cabin just after lunch on Saturday. She said she'd swing back Monday evening. It wasn't much of a cabin our grandmother's old hideout tucked in the slope of Alder Creek woods. If you weren't told it was there, you'd never find it. The trees pressed in so close they made the whole hillside feel like a throat trying to swallow the place. There was no cell service in that valley, not even a flicker of reception. If you needed a call, you had to hike nearly half a mile downhill, past a sagging fence post and a rusted culvert, then stand on this flat slab of granite spray-painted iron sometime in the 90s. That was the sweet spot. Anywhere else, nothing. Grandma used to call it the switchboard. When Claire leaned out the driver's window before leaving, she gave me this sharp look, eyebrows high, mouth tight, like she was saying without words, "Don't break anything. Don't lose your head. Don't do anything stupid." I just smirked, gave a lazy thumbs up, and she groaned before peeling off. Truth was, I wasn't nervous. We'd all stayed there alone at some point. The place was small, single-story rectangle, faded cedar boards, a storage shed that sagged like it was bowing, and an oil tank out back rusting into the dirt. Inside, it was clean but bare bones. 2 bunks, a sagging sofa, a few shelves of bird, guides and moldy cookbooks, a stove that never lit right. The quiet was the kind that pressed in from all sides. Not peaceful, the opposite. Thick, almost heavy enough to hear your pulse in. I always thought that was kind of neat. The first day was easy. I made a fried egg, flipped through one of Grandma's murder mysteries, fiddled with the generator until it coughed and died like a smoker hacking up tar. Not worth the fight. I wandered the woods. Counted squirrels sprawled on the porch. Nothing odd. Not yet. That night, close to midnight, I went to bed. The moon was fat enough to slice through the blinds, casting silver lines on the floor. I remember staring at those slivers, drifting. The silence was different now. More deliberate, like it was listening. I half wished for rain, something to break it. Somewhere between that thought and the next, I dozed off. What woke me wasn't loud, just a shuffle through leaves outside the wall. Slow, careful. I cracked one eye, muttered probably a raccoon, and let myself sink again. Morning showed me different. Near the back of the cabin, the damp soil was torn with tracks boot, prints, wide ones, longer than mine, deep at the heel like someone heavy had leaned their weight there. Not fresh, but not old either. They trailed past the bathroom window, bent toward the trees, and stopped. No returning prints, no circling back, just a dead end. I told myself hunters cut through sometimes, or neighbors. Rural land wasn't. Empty. But the sight stuck in my brain like a splinter dot by afternoon. The woods went wrong. Not slowly. One moment it was alive with chatter-chickadees, wind, the endless drone of bugs. The next, all of it fell away, snuffed out, like a switch had been thrown. No sound at all. I stood on the porch waiting for the hum to return. ID in single quotes T. Then came the knock. Not on the door. On the wall. A single, hard rap against the far kitchen wall. There was nothing back there but briars and a steep drop. No porch, no path, just mud and roots. My hand froze halfway to the fridge. The sound didn't repeat. No scuffing away. No crunch of steps, just that one solid hit. Like someone only wanted me to know they could. I made a circuit of the cabin, bolted the doors, slid the window locks. Even the tiny bathroom pane no one could ever crawl through. Not panicked, exactly, just alert. I ate half a pack of crackers, skimmed a page of my book 6 times without catching a word, paced the loop from door to window again and again. When night fell, I dragged the couch to face the entryway, set the camping axe from the shed across my lap, and left the propane lamp burning. It gave out around 2 a.m. a sputter. Then nothing but dark. I lit a candle, held it instead of leaving it on the table. At some point, I must have dozed when I jerked awake. The room was darker than dark. No fridge hum, no green glow from the clock. I lit another candle and froze. The couch had shifted, only a foot, maybe 2, but I knew where I'd left it. Dragline scuffed across the dusty floor. My stomach dropped. Nothing else disturbed, no footprints, no window open. just the couch, nudged from behind. I didn't sleep again. I sat there with the axe across my knees, staring into the corners until dawn broke at sunrise. I decided I was finished, threw some things in my pack, laced my boots, and stepped outside without breakfast. That's when I saw it. A note tucked under the mat, folded stiff. Grooves pressed so hard into the paper they nearly tore. The writing was blocky, almost gouge. Batteries, rope, lie, nails, flashlight. I dropped it like it had burned me. I didn't scream, didn't even run, just slid the door shut again and locked it. That whole day I sat at the table with the axe, across my lap, watching the note through the window, waiting for something at dusk to knock, this time on the front door, slow, deliberate. Then came breathing, calm, even too close, too human. I froze, barely daring to breathe myself. Eventually, it stopped. When I finally looked again, the note was gone around midnight. A second note lay on the table. I never heard the door. Same paper, same gouged writing. You took two. Long. My throat went dry. I couldn't reason with it anymore. Couldn't tell myself stories about hunters or hikers. By the third night, the message wasn't on paper. It was on the bathroom mirror, scrolled backward as if with grease. Where? Under the floor. The crawl space. I knew where it was. Low hatch behind the shed, leading under the cabin, barely 2 feet high. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not because I thought I'd find something. Because I thought I might not. I sat the rest of the night with her, axe balanced across my knees, watching the window, whispering nonsense to myself just to keep the silence from caving in. At first light, I left. I didn't close the door. I didn't even tie my boots. I walked barefoot down the hill to the orange stone, clutching my phone like a lifeline. When it finally buzzed alive, I called Claire. Just said, "Come now." She didn't ask questions. She must have heard it in my voice. We've never spoken of that weekend since.